Hey, it's Friday night. Welcome. Uh, there was no planning involved here. I just about half an hour ago was thinking, let's just go live. It's Friday and it's the beginning of weekend. I haven't done any updates all week. I've been out of town actually doing work stuff, and I thought, let's just do something live and hopefully some folks will join and chime in. Chat is open, so please hop in and introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. I've got some questions coming up, so I want to hear from you in the chat. In fact, let me turn my comments on here so I see any chats coming in. We are live on X, on YouTube, and on Facebook, and I believe you can interact on all three of those platforms. So here's what I want to do. I want to share some emails. I got some emails stacked up here that I haven't shared, and we'll jump into that. But then I want you to be thinking of some of your favorite music because I'm going to be asking questions about that, and I'll want to hear from you on that. So let's jump right in. I'm Jeremy, by the way, the founder, host, and president of the Classic Guitar Rock podcast. I liked it so much I bought the company. Okay, I'm cracking myself up. Okay, let's jump in and read some emails. Okay, here we go. Hey, I just listened to your top 10 and you were mentioning Riot as a record that didn't quite make it, but there was a podcast about Fire Down Under. Just wanted to share with you that this album, I'm listening to your podcast right now, meant a lot to me back then, even here in Italy. I remember queuing up at the record store to get my copy. Somehow I remember it as badly recorded, mixed, probably too muddy. But now when streamed, I can't hear that. Either I got better equipment or I effed up my ears forever. Thanks for your podcast. Rock and roll. Maurizio from Italy. Maurizio, thanks so much for sending that in. You can email me too, by the way, at classicguitarrock@mail.com. That's classicguitarrock@mail.com. Next email. You don't suck, Jeremy. Haters are going to hate. Ha ha. Okay. Thank you very much. That's from Will Hines. Okay, I got to tell you, Will is one of my friends. So Will's got my back, chiming in for me. Thank you, Will. Thank you very much. Next email. Oh, I have to tell you, this is from a gentleman that I worked with years ago. Let's see. I started my broadcasting career in 1985. Started working at a little radio station in Oklahoma, and I was an intern. Started out as an intern. I wrote some copy. I kind of learned how to work in the production room, and then in 1986 I had an opportunity to go to work as an announcer. So I was the overnight guy at this radio station, the famous KRLG in Lawton, Oklahoma. Our afternoon guy was a cool guy named Bradley J. And I have an email from Bradley J., the elusive, the man, the myth, the legend, Bradley J. And here's what he says. Hello, Jeremy. Just listened to episode 60 and I enjoyed it. It inspired me to try and make my own list. And dang, it's hard. After one quick pass through my collection, I had 17 albums. I was able to eliminate 2, so here are my 5 honorable mentions and top 10 in reverse order. So, by the way, if you'd like to share your top 10, do so in the chat. Love to hear that. So here's Bradley J., the famous Bradley J. from KRLG, Lawton, Oklahoma, circa 1986. Here's his honorable mentions. Blackfoot Strikes, Boston's debut album, Lynyrd Skynyrd's Second Helping, Shooting Star, Hang On For Your Life, Deep Purple, Machine Head. I can't argue with any of those. Those are great, especially the Shooting Star. I would not have thought of Shooting Star, but that's a great album. Shooting Star, one of those bands that just never got the mainstream attention they should have because they had a lot of great stuff. And of course, he's got classics there like the Boston debut album, Machine Head. Wow, classic album. Those are just the honorable mentions. And every time I read someone else's list, I'm like, dang, I should have had that on my list. Okay. Okay. Here's his top 10 quintessential albums. This is from Bradley J. Number 10, Head East, Flat as a Pancake. I got to tell you, I mean, I'm familiar with the Head East hits. I'm not real familiar with that album, so I'm going to go check that out. I respect, Bradley was one of these guys that had a pretty encyclopedic musical knowledge. So I'm going to definitely, on his recommendation, check out that entire album. Number 9, Scorpions, Animal Magnetism. Great album. Personally, my favorite Scorpions album is probably Blackout, but Animal Magnetism, it's a really good album. Number 8, Nazareth's Hair of the Dog. Number 7, and Bradley, I have to say, I'm surprised because when I knew you, you were like the biggest BTO fan I knew, but coming in at number 7, you've got Bachman Turner Overdrive 2. I thought I'd see BTO higher on your list. I'm not going to say I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed, Bradley. That's all I'm going to say. Then you've got number 6, and this is in I think it was pretty close to the top of my quintessential list. ZZ Top's Tres Hombres. Just a perfect album from start to finish. Number 5, Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime. Number 4, Great White, Once Bitten. Number 3, Grand Funk, We're an American Band. He finishes up with 2 classics. I mean, you can't argue with these albums. Number 2, he's got Kansas, Left Overture. Number 1, Jethro Tull, Aqualung. And he says this, there's some fine print. Of course, check back with me later today, and it will probably be different. Keep on rocking. Your pal and former coworker, Bradley J. Bradley, I'm going to have you come on the show sometime. I'm just be ready because we got to get together and talk about music. Okay, another email here. Let's see. Hello, how are you? I'm a veteran rock journalist who has been writing for several decades. He's plugging a book, which is okay. And in fact, I think I've already, if this is the same email I'm thinking, I've already responded and said, hey, I'd love to have you on. So let me read the email. I'm a veteran rock journalist who has been writing for several decades. I wrote a book about my remarkable relationship with Eddie Van Halen. The book is titled Tone Chaser, Understanding Edward, my 26-year journey with Edward Van Halen, which traces my friendship with the late and legendary guitarist from 1977 until 2003. I self-published the 580-page hardback, which is now in its second printing. I would dig coming on your podcast and regaling you with tales of what it was like hanging out with the greatest guitar player on the planet. The book has been warmly received by fans and musicians alike. You can find out more about my book here. I'll share the address with you guys if you're interested. ToneChaserBook.com. Thank you for your time and interest. Look forward to hearing back. Gratefully, Steve. And I did reach out to Steve. Steve Rosen is his name. And we will have him on. I think that would be a great interview. I'm a huge Eddie fan, and I think it would be great to hear from him. One more email here. Again, guys, go into the chat and say hi. And then I've got some questions I'm going to post for us here in a minute. Jeremy, I just have to say I am really enjoying your podcast, and your new sidekick, JR, cracks me up. JR's not here tonight. You probably noticed that. JR's not here tonight because it was last minute, right? I couldn't spring it on JR and say, hey, well, I tried to spring it on JR, but for some reason, JR couldn't come on with 5 minutes notice. I don't know what his problem is. We're going to have to rethink this. Okay, we're going to have to rethink this relationship. I'm joking, of course. Let me start over. Jeremy, I just have to say I'm really enjoying your podcast, and your new sidekick, JR, cracks me up. Music, more than anything, sends me, quote, reeling in the years and brings back so many good memories. I think I'm a little older than you. I graduated from high school in 1979, but we have very similar tastes in music. I'm not ashamed to say I miss the great music and great times our generation, young baby boomers and Gen Xers, were able to experience. Thanks for taking me back to those days. By the way, I love the montages you play at the beginning of each podcast episode. I also follow you on Twitter and love all the polls, picks, etc. Keep rocking. Brent M., Katy, Texas. Brent, thanks so much for your email. And I completely agree. I think I've even said this before. For me, music more than anything really brings back memories and nostalgia. And the older you get, the quicker the time goes by. And yeah, it is awesome to be able to go back and revisit not just the music, but the great things that we got to experience in the 70s and 80s. And that's great. So thanks so much for your email, Brent. Again, my email address, classicguitarrock@mail.com. That's classicguitarrock@mail.com. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to post some questions. I have a few questions. And what I'd love for you to do is just respond in the chat. Now, if you're watching this later after it's recorded, wherever you see it, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, respond in the comments because I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So let me post a few questions here. Let's start with this one. First question is, what is your favorite live album? About an hour ago, 2 hours ago on Twitter, I listed 4 live albums and asked which of those were your favorite. So just to kind of prime the pump, the choices I gave in that question, and there's multiple excellent live albums. I just started with these 4. But the 4 I started with were Cheap Tricks at Budokan, UFO's Strangers in the Night, Frampton Comes Alive, and Rush's All the World's a Stage. Now, you can respond to any of those or come up with whatever answer you want, but just some ideas, something to think about. And while you're doing that, I'm going to share with you my favorite live album, the album I think is the best live album. Many to choose from. I love the Cheap Trick album. At Budokan's great. All the World's a Stage is great. I love Exit Stage Left. Great live albums. Live and Dangerous by Thin Lizzy, an awesome live album. Worldwide Live, The Scorpions, great album. Tokyo Tapes, another great live album from Scorpions. But my personal favorite live album, and I'll die on this hill, and if you haven't heard it, you should listen. As soon as we're done here, you should stream it and listen to it. My favorite live album, a criminally underrated band, is it's UFO, and their live album Strangers in the Night came out I think it came out in 78, maybe. That is my favorite live album. But I'd love to hear your favorite live album. Last night, you know what I listened to? First time I've listened to it in a long time. The Deep Purple's Made in Japan live album. Man, that's a really good album too. Just excellent album. Here was my thought I'm a huge Ritchie Blackmore fan, but when you hear it live, when you hear him playing live, it just, and you remember that this is 1972 when this album came out. Ritchie Blackmore, I'm going to get in trouble when I say this. I would pick Ritchie Blackmore over Jimmy Page. I would. I prefer Blackmore over Page. I'd rather listen to Jimmy Blackmore than Eric Clapton. Of the big, I don't know if you can call Ritchie Blackmore the Big Four. So when you got the Big Four, growing up reading guitar mags in the 70s and 80s, the Big Four were, Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix. Okay. Those are probably the Big Four. Blackmore's probably in the Big Six, right? You add maybe Blackmore there. Maybe you add Pete Townsend. Maybe, I don't know. Pete Townsend, he's a different type of guitar player. But for my money, of the Big Four, Jeff Beck, I'd probably put ahead of Richie Blackmore. But of those classic guys that started in the 60s, Richie's probably my guy right after Jeff Beck. But that was a I'd heard it before, but it was like a revelation again, listening to Deep Purple's live in Japan. Blackmore's playing is just unbelievable. And it's just a great live album. But my favorite live album, as I mentioned, is Strangers in the Night, featuring the mercurial evil genius that is Michael Schenker. And Michael Schenker, probably my all-time favorite guitar player. He's just, no one plays like he does. And he's an interesting character because he's a little, let's just say he marches to a different drummer, right? Some people might say he's crazy. I don't know. But man, super talented guy. I love that guy. And the playing on that album is phenomenal. And of course, the tragedy of that is he was already out of the band by the time they released the album. He was kind of infamous for leaving, he had substance abuse. He's got those sorted out, fortunately, now, and he's playing better than ever now. But he always had a kind of love-hate relationship with Phil Mogg. And in the middle of that tour, that was actually the Obsession tour of 1977. He left the band. So they released this live album after he's gone. They actually had a tour called the Strangers in the Night Tour, but that featured Paul Chapman. Nothing against Paul Chapman, but he wasn't Michael Schenker. Right. I mean, he was a good player, but he just was not Michael Schenker. And so they did this tour. Schenker's gone. They're doing the Strangers in the Night tour. And back then, guys, we didn't have the internet. There was no internet. So, if you had been listening, if you heard the Obsession album or even the Strangers in the Night album, and then you see UFOs come into your town and they're probably opening for, Ted Nugent or Cheap Trick or Kiss. They were always opening for someone. You were probably going expecting to see Michael Schenker, and you go, who's that? That's not Michael Schenker, because we didn't know. We didn't know that. They don't tell you on the tickets that, hey, Michael Schenker's not here anymore. But a lot of folks. In fact, I've talked to folks that were like kind of disappointed when they go to see UFO in the late 70s and realize that Schenker's not there anymore. Nothing against Chapman. Chapman was a great player, but Michael Schenker was just on another level. I've done a whole podcast episode on that UFO Phenomenon album, and we talk about Schenker. And Schenker was he was 18 years old when he joined UFO. Maybe only 17, 18 when he did the first album. But in the mid 70s, the Rolling Stones were interested in Schenker. Ozzy was interested in Schenker. So who knows what might have happened had things gone a little differently. But the work he did with UFO was incredible. And his early solo stuff was incredible too. So for my money, the greatest live album was UFO's Strangers in the Night. What about you? I'd love to see it in the chat. Share with us what your favorite live album is. We can talk about that. What's the other live album I mentioned? Oh, Cheap Trick. Cheap Tricks at Budokan. Put them on the map. A great live album. If all your exposure to Cheap Trick is just the hits, man, you got to dig deeper because they are awesome. They've got a lot of great material that is, hang on, I'm responding to my agent. Who am I? I don't have an agent. It's my wife. It's my boss. Okay. So, if all you know about Cheap Trick is the hits, then yeah, dig deeper, because man, they got a lot of great stuff. And they are one of the great live bands of the 70s. They really are. They still put on a great show. Robin Zander can still hit most of the notes and still a great performer, great singer. They're good. I've seen them about 12 times and I love them. And that's a great live album. I have the At Budokan album, but then there's also a few years ago, they released a expanded Budokan. It was like the total, it's twice as long. So it's the same production. It's from the same recordings that they made the Budokan album. They just added more stuff that didn't make the first album, but it's really good. So that's a great album as well. But I'd love to hear what your favorite live album is if you want to share. And if you don't want to share, that's okay too, because I got another question. Okay, here's another question. Let's see here. One more question for you. If you don't want to share your favorite live album, here's another one. What are your 5 desert island albums? If you're going to be on a desert island, you can only take 5 albums. What albums are those? Love to hear yours. Share those with us and we can talk about that. So here's mine. As we sit here, these are the 5 I would take with me. And I'm literally writing this down, stream of consciousness. If you ask me tomorrow, it might be different. But right now, the 5 albums I would take would be ZZ Top's Degüello, already mentioned, or not Degüello, Tres Hombres, though Degüello is a great album too. Tres Hombres, that's got to go. I would also say Def Leppard, High and Dry. It's got to go. Def Leppard, High and Dry. I would say, now here's a tough one. I could take 2, but I'm only going to take one Ozzy Osbourne album. And I could, depending on the day, I could go either way with Blizzard or Diary. I'm only going to take one. At this moment, I will take Blizzard. So that's 3 so far. What else can I take? And by the way, I'm not going to take any live albums. I just talked about live albums. So I'm not going to take live albums. So far I've got ZZ Top, Tres Hombres, Def Leppard, High and Dry, Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz. I'm going to take a Priest album. Taking Judas Priest. And I'm going to take British Steel. What do you think? British Steel. I need one more album. Desert Island album. Man. And again, this would change tomorrow. But right now, what I'm feeling deep in my heart, I'm going to take Iron Maiden. I'm taking Iron Maiden. Peace of Mind. Those are my 5 desert island albums. ZZ Top, in no particular order. But right now, if I'm going to be stranded on an island, these are the 5 that I take. ZZ Top, Tres Hombres, Def Leppard, High and Dry, Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz, Judas Priest, British Steel, Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind. I'm going to sneak a 6th one in. I'll slide it under my sleeping bag because I just thought of it. And it's a great album, one of my favorites. It's the first Cars album. First Cars album. It's ironic that the greatest album of the 80s came out in 1978. The Cars album, okay? So that's going in there too. So I cheated. I've got 6. But why don't you share with us your 5 that you would take on a desert island? Okay, so Bruce K, this is back to our previous question. So I'm going to put the previous question up. And let's see here. Sorry, remember the previous question. So these are our 2 questions. What is your favorite live album? So share that with us in the chat. And then the second question is your 5 desert island albums. Share that with us in the chat. Okay. So let's go here because Bruce has some comments. Bruce is on the live album thing, and I'll just share so you see Bruce's response. Bruce K says Rush, Exit Stage Left. Great album. That is the third Rush album I owned. First Rush album I ever owned was All the World's a Stage. And then I got I got Moving Pictures next. No, that's not true. I got All the World's a Stage first, then 2112, then Exit Stage Left. Yes, third album, then Moving Pictures. So Exit Stage Left is his favorite live, and I can't argue with that. It's a great live album. One of probably my second favorite live album, to be honest. Probably the one I've listened to the most after All the World's a Stage. And then Bruce has an interesting comment here. I learned a lot of how to play guitar from Exit Stage Left. And you know what? So did I. I struggled trying to learn Red Barchetta. And I watched a guy in a music store play the little harmonic part. And so I kind of copied off that guy. And guys, back then it was, you had to like learn. Now you could just go on YouTube and learn how to play anything, right? But back in 1982, that's not the way it worked out, right? But I struggled with learning Red Barchetta, and I kind of got it down. But that was probably the first Rush song. That and Fly By Night, I think, are the first two Rush songs I tried to really pick apart and learn how to play. Not that I play them well, but that's what I tried. So great, Bruce. Thanks for chiming in. So Bruce, let us know your 5 Desert Island records too. I'd love to hear what 5 albums you would take with you if you could only have 5 on this weird desert island that apparently has electricity and you can plug in your turntable or CD player and listen to it. But I'd love to hear that. So putting the questions back up. 2 questions. Remember, the first question was, what is your favorite live album? So share that with us. And then the second question is, what are your 5 desert island albums? Now, if you're watching this in the recording of this, please share that down in the comments. That would be great. Okay. I keep thinking of these albums. 5 is tough. 5 is almost impossible to narrow down to, but we have the email from Maurizio at the beginning that I share with you about Riot. At one point, I would have absolutely had that Riot album, Fire Down Under, on my desert island list. That's how much I played that album and how great that album is. If you've never listened to Fire Down Under, you should check it out. One of the things that I really think this is one of the reasons that Riot never broke big. They had stupid album covers. Someone somewhere decided, I know, let's have like a baby seal man be our mascot. Okay. You know, Iron Maiden has Eddie, you know, he's kind of cool and creepy looking. Well, Riot decided, let's have a guy that has a head like a baby seal. How smart is that? So you see this stupid baby seal on the front of all their albums. And I know people didn't buy albums because they look stupid. They're lost because they're really good. Their first 3 albums are excellent, but especially Fire Down Under from 1981. Highly recommended. There's one throwaway track on the album, and it's not terrible, but it's just kind of a live recording of the guitar solo, and then they play a bunch of radio clips. It's just kind of weird. It's just filler. But the rest of the album, every cut on that album is excellent. And ironically, they're from New York, but they were kind of shoehorned in with the whole new wave of British heavy metal. It was around the same time frame. They actually did some tours in the UK, and they just kind of fit in really well with that whole new wave of British heavy metal. But for whatever reason, they never got the uh, recognition they should have, because they were a very talented band. We got a whole episode on them if you want to check that out in one of our past episodes. So still got a few minutes left if you guys want to chime in. Again, what are your 5 desert island albums? And what is your favorite live album? If you want to share that here in the chat, or if you're watching after the fact on the recording, please share in the comments the 2 questions. What's your favorite live album? And what are your 5 desert island albums? Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. You can always email me, classicguitarrock@mail.com. And if you aren't already following us on Twitter, you can do that. Twitter, now X, it's called X now, at Classic Guitar R1. We have lots of fun. We're up to almost 50,000 followers there. We do lots of polls, lots of questions, lots of interactive stuff. So we'd love to hear from you there. And one last plug, again, on Twitter, for just $1 a month. Well, you can read right here. For only $1 a month, you can subscribe to the best podcast on the planet, or you can subscribe to ours. But either way, it's only going to cost you $1. And you can do that on Twitter for just $1 a month. If you follow us on Twitter, you'll see a little pink subscribe button. You click on that subscribe button, and then for just $1 a month, you're a monthly subscriber, and that entitles you to all the rights and privileges, which is nothing, but you're subscribing and helping us take over the world. Guys, I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. And if you're watching the recording, please share with us your favorite live album, and also your favorite or your 5 desert island albums. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. I got one last comment. I can always count on Bruce. Appreciate it, Bruce. Bruce says, okay, this is perfect. Bruce's are 1, Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti; 2, AC/DC, Back in Black; 3, Rush, 2112. 2112. Bruce, I didn't include 2112. How did I overlook that? See, I got to bump someone from my top 5, because 2112 has to be there. So I don't know which one to bump. I'm going to be thinking about this all night, but 2112 definitely has to be there. You've got Blizzard of Oz there also. That's only 4. I don't know if you have a 5th one. He's probably counting on his fingers and toes right now. The 5th one. All phenomenal albums. Can't argue with that, right? You can't argue with that. That's a killer list. Killer list. All right. So, guys, thanks so much. Oh, Van Halen. Of course, the debut Van Halen album. There you go. So, the entire list of Bruce's is Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, AC/DC, Black in Black, Rush, 2112, Ozzy, Blizzard, and Van Halen 1. 5 is just not realistic. You got to have at least 10 desert island records. That's what I've decided now. Bruce, thanks so much for chiming in. Thank you all for joining. And Terry, now you guys start chiming in. Okay. Terry Sanders, David Gilmour, live from Gdansk. I haven't heard that, but Terry, I'm going to listen to that album. I'm going to listen to it. I love David Gilmour's playing. I'll definitely check that out. Guys, have a great weekend. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.